This week on the Virtual Skeptics, Bob psychically protests. Eve's still in a cult. Blake, hey, it's Blake Smith of Monster Talk. And Tim has returned to take over the show again. That's right.
Mysteriously, Brian is missing.
Yes, seriously, Brian is missing.
Do you know what each other, what you look like? Would you recognize each other in a crowd?
I don't know. Yeah. Well,
Has Lois Lane ever seen you together? What?
Yeah,
I never
no
have a
kidding.
hat. He has a hat, so that's how you tell.
But he's aged since you last saw him.
So here we are. I've been gone for 3 weeks, so I don't remember how we do this. But I'm hosting this week, and pull that out so we won't get weird noises for the rest of the show. And here we are, Virtual Skeptics. I'm your host, Tim Farley, and our panel this week is Bob Blazkowicz, CSI's conspiracy guy, web columnist, blogger for Skeptical Humanities, and Swift blog contributor. Eve Siebert, editor and blogger at Skeptical Humanities and contributor to Skepticality and Insight at Skeptic.com. And Blake Smith, our guest this week, is the host of Monster Talk, the science show about monsters, and also a contributor to Insight. That's contributor and creator of What's the Harm, and, in theory, a contributor at Skeptic.com, although my first post has not gone up yet. Due to me being out of town and all the other things that kept me away from this show. So soon, maybe tomorrow or Friday, you will see my first post. So anyone's watching live on Wednesday, you can interact. We have the Q&A app running. If you're watching us on Google+, you can answer. So if you have any questions.
The little people.
Something we leave out or something we got wrong, you can point it out or question us. And now the first thing in the show is the trivia question. Today, October 8th, is the anniversary of the beginning of the Chicago Fire, the famous Chicago Fire in 1871. Now, of course, the myth is the cow kicked over the lamp. That's not generally accepted as real. But there's another myth, a more skeptic pseudoscience myth, a fringe theory, if you will, of what the cause of the Chicago Fire was, that some character named Ignatius Donnelly came up with 10 years or so after the fire. Where did he say the fire came from? Where did Ignatius Donnelly, in a crackpot theory, claim the Chicago Fire got started from? That's your trivia question.
Mrs. O'Leary's gonorrhea.
Mrs. O'Leary's what?
Gonorrhea.
Oh, nasty. All right. So we'll go into the segment. I'm trying to keep an eye on whether people are getting the question. And first up, I think, is Bob, right?
Yep. So as I researched my story for today, I ended up on the homepage of Sally Morgan, a.k.a. Psychic Sally. She's a psychic in the UK. And she has a wonderful relationship with the public.
I predicted you'd do that.
Yeah, but that's because you're funny. So she has a great relationship with the public, as she says, if you could bring up the first image herself on her website. She says, I am so grateful for all the messages and emails I receive on a daily basis. Knowing that my work has given guidance to so many people truly inspires me to continue every day. Although I wish I could speak to you individually, it's become impossible. My team and I try our best to keep in touch with you all and answer your questions, and we hope that you find all of the information helpful. And by her team, Sally Morgan clearly means her lawyer, Graham Atkins, and her husband and manager, John Morgan. Damn it, Sally, don't sleep with the help. They get all uppity. All right. So by uppity, I mean that according to skeptic Mark Tilbrook, uppity in Tilbrook's face, threatening him with violence and creepy statements about knowing where he lives. Kind of like what Mark Stevens did to Reese Morgan. No relation.
But she's psychic. Of course she knows where he lives.
Of course, obviously. Yeah, she just had her little psychic friend follow him home. So yeah, the story is Tilbrook attended 3 of Silly Sally's shows. If you could bring up the next image. And he passed out flyers that gave tips about how to spot someone who was making, who may be faking psychic powers. Asking really hard-hitting questions like, does the stage psychic make entirely correct statements about the dead, or is it a series of hits and misses? Or does the stage psychic pass on accurate messages that are specific and extraordinary, or are they very general and likely to apply to many in the audience? Right? So really, really mean and nasty stuff. This was apparently enough to make the help flip its collective shit out, suggesting to me at least that she might be perhaps transparently awful as a psychic. Yeah, according to a letter from Tilbrook that ran yesterday in The Guardian, I think The Guardians are also the one who ran a note from Reese when he was threatened by Brzezinski's people. Mm-hmm. Quote, shortly after the third show he attended, quote, I received a letter from Sally Morgan's solicitor, Graham Atkins, informing me that she intended to sue me for libel. The letter claimed that my leaflet contained numerous defamatory allegations about Sally Morgan and demanded an undisclosed sum of money in compensation, plus nearly £2,000 in legal fees. That's almost 175 yen. So, it's 174 and 88 yen pennies, to be precise. Yeah. Yennies, right?
Yen.
So, yeah, mention libel threats in the UK. Mention libel threats to a UK skeptic, and very soon this man, could you bring up the next image, is sure to sweep in. See what I did there? Sweep in. Thank you. Simon Singh has arranged for the lawyer who represented him in the libel case, brought on by the litigious nitwits of the British Chiropractic Association, and the lawyer who won that case. He's brought him on to help Tilbrook, and as ne'er-do-wells as ne'er-do-wells are increasingly learning, the harder you kick at skeptics kick back even harder, close ranks, and intensify their efforts, because they have to. Tilbrook has said that he's going to up his game. He's been to, even after all these threats, he's gone back and he's been threatened again, and he has no intention of stopping passing out literature that will help people think about these things critically. So, good on you, Mark.
Yeah, it's good. It's a nice bit of activism, and they're planning on doing some more of it. And actually, right before showtime, I got a private message from Michael Marshall of the Merseyside Skeptics and the Good Thinking Society, who have kind of sparred with Psychic Sally before, and he said that article was the 3rd most read article on The Guardian today. So
oh wow!
A lot of people saw that item.
It was above on the science pages. It was above the Nobel Prize announcements. So
yeah, some good activism going on up there. So that was good.
So well done, and thanks to Simon Singh, who's he's definitely one of the good guys.
Yeah, and this is a story you should keep an eye on because they've got some other things coming.
Yes.
Not to, and actually, I don't know what else they have coming. Frankly, I don't know anything.
I thought they were spoilers.
That's because you're not psychic.
But I know they have. I think they're treating October as Psychic Awareness Month or something like that. So they have some other things for the rest of October.
Huzzah. Yeah, they're going to be visiting people, I think, like Derek Akora. They have, I think, a standing challenge to psychics to test on Halloween. They don't.
Yeah, they tried to get Sally to do that last year, and she didn't.
Yeah.
Didn't want to do it. All right. So, psychics being challenged in the UK. That's very good. And next up, we have Eve. Right?
Yes. So, previously on Virtual Skeptics. I've always wanted to do that. I talked about a strange cult, the Process Church of the Final Judgment. And just to recap, we should have scenes from last week, but with really dramatic music. But they started off as an offshoot of Scientology, so start well. Then became an apocalyptic satanic cult with a fondness for Nazis and some ties to Charles Manson, so it kept getting better.
Wow.
Yeah. Then after a spate of bad publicity, because Nazis, Satan, Charles Manson, they tried to change their image, drop the satanic theology, drop their main sort of theologian, tried to get into the 70s ESP tarot channeling craze, and then eventually, after several name changes, somehow they turned into Best Friends Animal Society in Kanab, Utah.
In what?
I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I'm saying Kanab.
Okay.
Which is huge. It's supposed to be the largest no-kill shelter in the United States. It's many miles. It's sort of its own little world. Well, I have an update. First of all, this week, Yahoo Travel ran a fairly lengthy article about Best Friends called "Every Animal Lover Needs to Take This Vacation," written by Joe Piazza. The idea is that people should take a volunteering vacation, or voluntourism. Yeah, I think whoever came up with that word should be slapped. Really, I think people should volunteer, take a vacation, volunteering vacation, and just slap that person.
Take a vacation because I'm volunteered.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, take a volunteering
You're so
vacation.
violent.
Stay at a cottage at Best Friend's huge compound. Help take care of dogs, cats, bunnies, pigs, horses, whatever your favorite critter is.
And worship Satan.
Well, sure. And check out an animal for sleepovers.
Hey yo.
Did you like run their butt across
It's
the
a
floor?
lending animal rescue group, apparently.
Library.
Piazza calls Best Friends the happiest place on earth, and Disney World for animal lovers. I think somewhere she says it's better than Disney World.
Wow.
She makes it sound kind of awesome, and perhaps just a teeny tiny bit culty. Although perhaps I'm sort of primed for that because I know it grew out of a cult. She says that almost everyone there is a return visitor, and that, and this is a quote, visitors will hear over and over again stories of people who came once and then just stayed. I don't know if they gave all their money to the society.
They actually said that?
Yep. Not the thing about the money.
Oh my gosh, that's cryptic. Like chained up in a basement somewhere? They just stayed.
I know.
That's the PC version of "and we're never heard from again."
They just stayed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as you know.
Yeah. Piazza, and we'll get into that a little bit more, but Piazza briefly mentions the founding of Best Friends, and this is what she says, quote, "Back in 1984, when the founders of Best Friends first came across the plot of land in Kanab, there wasn't much around but a few ranch houses and the remains of movie sets used in westerns like The Outlaw Josie Wales and Jodie Foster's first film, One Little Indian." And, quote within a quote, "When we found this place, it was a dream come true. It was raw land. We had very little money and very little sense," Francis Batista, Best Friends co-founder, explained. "We had no business plan and no model. The locals thought we were a bunch of remnants of 60s idealists puttering around in the high desert," unquote. So no mention there of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, and Batista should know about it because, like the other founders of Best Friends, he was a member and part of the inner circle. Now, I think I actually said last week that by the time Best Friends was established, few, if any, members remained from the satanic cult days. But I've done some more research, and this appears not to be the case. In fact, all the founders were members of the Process Church. Other people involved.
No kill except for the goats.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I did see accusations of them doing animal sacrifices, but not on a particularly reliable site. But there are also people who were children of the cult, so still involved. It's actually been kind of difficult to find out information about the transformation from cult to animal rescue group. Some of it seems to have sort of disappeared from the internet. I could only find a few of the articles on the Wayback Machine. Other articles that are critical of Best Friends are themselves, as I've suggested, of somewhat dubious reliability. They focus on conspiracy theories. So, mention the Illuminati, and I'm not entirely going to trust you. So here's what I did find. First, as I mentioned briefly last week, the Process always had an interest in animals, especially dogs, and most especially German Shepherds. Now, I don't want to say anything against German Shepherds. They're lovely animals, but they were kind of popular with the Nazis. And again, the Process did have a thing about the Nazis. Their symbols looked like rather swastika-like, and they just had a kind of a fondness for them. Some members also said that dogs were better than humans and thought that dogs could sense the coming apocalypse 30 years ago. Well, no, more than 50 years ago now, I guess, going on toward. And they also used donations to animals or appeals to animals to scam donations that didn't really go to animals. Apparently, in early 2004, the Rocky Mountain News ran a story about Best Friends' origins. I couldn't find the article. It's behind a paywall, and also it was taking forever for the Rocky Mountain News to load at all. But they outed Best Friends. And in response, Best Friends sort of fessed up and posted an old history section on their About Us page. That info is no longer there, and I couldn't find it on the Wayback Machine. But they apparently kind of spun the story to look as positive as possible, crazy, idealistic, hippie kids sort of thing. But as I said, it's no longer there on their website. If you bring up my first slide, is what they do have on their website about their history. This is our story, the beginning of Best Friends. This places the organization's foundation in the 80s and is very self-serving. So briefly it says, when shelters across America routinely killed cats and dogs as the primary method of dealing with unwanted pets, a group of friends began taking some of those unadoptables to a safe haven to heal. That group of friends who cared so deeply about animals grew and flourished and became Best Friends Animal Society. No mention of Satan, Nazis, or Manson, strangely enough.
This is probably why your personal website never really took off, Eve, because you just jumped right in with the Manson.
Yeah. Similarly, and this is the next slide, on their frequently asked question page, question number 1 is, in fact, how did Best Friends begin? And the answer is Best Friends had its origin in Arizona in the 1970s. So it was founded in both the 70s and the 80s, which is difficult.
Nice.
So in Arizona in the 70s, with a group of animal lovers who were unwilling to accept the conventional wisdom of the time that humane societies and shelters had no choice but to kill their unadoptable animals. Francis Batista, Yahoo Travel article, did a Reddit Ask Me Anything a year ago. I have a slide from that as well. And he says Best Friends was founded by a group of friends who were part of a non-denominational religious group that adhered to the belief that a spiritual life is expressed through kindness, especially through kindness to those in need. When someone suggests that the process was more than that, he doesn't actually reply to them. So ask me anything, I'm not going to answer it though. So this all seems a teeny tiny bit disingenuous. Here, the next slide, is their incorporation documents from the state of Louisiana. They originally incorporated in Louisiana. And you can see the line of descent. It was the Process Church of the Final Judgment, the Foundation Church of whatever, I can't entirely see it. But it keeps going on and on until it gets to Best Friends Animal Sanctuary.
It's kind of like someone told them their name was too ominous, and they changed it. They said, "Nah, it's still kind of ominous."
Yeah,
that's
still kind of giving me a bad buzz, and then they changed it again. Finally, it's like, "Oh, we're just gonna call it, Crazy Cat Picture Club."
Yeah, and even though they were physically in Utah, they were incorporated in Louisiana. However, they did finally. The last name change from Best Friends Animal Sanctuary to Best Friends Animal Society, they have a corporate filing in Utah now, and that one, conveniently, because they switched states, doesn't have any of this history on it. Nice. So that's handy. I have seen some accusations against them that they're on the more radical end of the animal welfare movement, like PETA and Animal Liberation Front. And I don't know how true that is. Also some accusations about how the cult did form into Best Friends and a certain amount of continuation. They are hugely successful financially. Hugely, and also successful as far as publicity is concerned, and of course, sort of scrubbing away the satanic cult part is important to that. They very visibly rescued animals after Hurricane Katrina. Before that, they actually apparently had not, according to Wikipedia, had not been involved in disaster rescue before that. The Yahoo Travel article begins by talking about Patty Hegwood, the director of volunteer and visitor engagement.
Who is that?
Patty Hegwood.
Okay. Sorry, I heard something else.
Okay. Well, and the Yahoo Travel article includes this interesting statement. Don't even get her started about the time she stole a truck to get some of those critters across the state line.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's actually. Did you look up where it is on the map?
In Utah.
It's right on the border. It's right on the border.
Oh, nice.
With what?
Arizona.
Oh, yeah.
Do they only rescue animals, or will they rescue child brides, for example?
No, I did see somewhere that it might be in the Yahoo article that they took in animals from a multiple marriage bad situation, but they took in the animals, not the child brides. They also very publicly again took in some of Michael Vick's dogs. So they get a lot of publicity. They get a lot of money. The Batista guy also did a TEDx talk, which I didn't watch, but he apparently did one. So I don't know exactly what to think about Best Friends. My parents, I know, donated money to them and got their Warm Fuzzy Kitty Puppy magazine. I know someone who lived in St. Louis, volunteered with a rescue group in St. Louis, during the winter, I believe she went to, I thought it was Arizona, but I think it was Utah. I'm sure it was Best Friends and volunteered there. But I think I will continue to choose different animal welfare groups to donate to or volunteer with. And since this is just kind of a little bit of a downer, just very quickly can end with some pictures of rescue kitties.
Oh, that's adorable.
Stackable kittens from the place where I volunteered in Atlanta. They're stacked on Bob there.
Yeah.
Next one is another cat from the same place. And the last one is my own personal rescue kitty. An occasional host on Virtual Skeptics.
So the
Jesse,
white, blue-eyed kitten that was owned by the Nazis, is that?
That's exactly.
No.
Yes.
No.
Another Godwin's Law violation.
Yep. Only took us 27 minutes this time.
It says Godwin's Law. No.
Take a drink.
Yeah.
That cat looks smug.
The drinking game.
He is very smug.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has a real attitude problem. And a
Alex
pink
pointed
nosy.
out that another place where people just in the Q&A, Alex Murdoch pointed out that another place where people came once and just stay is a graveyard.
It's true.
Very true.
Good point, Alex.
Yep.
All right. Okay.
I'm currently. I would like to say that Google Maps is a lot of fun
Yeah.
because I am currently just kind of going around the rescue center.
It's the next logical step after driverless cars. There's just passengers sitting at home not going anywhere.
I am all over that. Wow.
Yep.
Thanks to Google,
All
I don't have to drive.
So you're done, Eve? Okay, so it's
Yeah.
time for my segment, I guess. I haven't done a segment in a while, because even when I was here 4 weeks ago, my internet sucked. I am going to talk about sort of skeptical allies and who's building things that are useful to us. When I first got started in skepticism back with TAM 5 in 2007, one of the things I realized was, I kind of wanted to be involved, but I needed to find a way for me to do something. And I'm a computer guy, so I got involved with the computer stuff. And I didn't just want to build another website, although that was my first project. What's the harm? I thought it would be cool to build tools, build machines, build things that skeptics could use to do skeptic work. And I thought it would be easy to find a lot of people who wanted to do this with me, because if you go to a skeptic conference and ask 6 random people what they do for a living, 5 of them will tell you they're in IT. So I figured we have all these computer people floating around. Surely some of them would like to build some things. And actually that has happened to a degree. I'm not just whining here. A number of things have gotten built over the years. Some of them have come and gone, because, not every thing is successful. But when I did a survey of podcasts a couple of years ago, Shane Brady built a thing called Skeptunes, which became a database of skeptical podcasts, and he's continuing to update that. And there's a thing called the Skepticator that one of the Australian skeptics built, and another of the Australian skeptics built a plugin for WordPress to help people put nofollow on their links. But not a ton more than that. We've had some iPhone apps which didn't even exist when I first started talking about this stuff. But the interesting thing that's happened is there have been some apps that have started appearing that are kind of, not directly targeted at skeptic stuff, but very interesting to skeptics because they deal with things like fact-checking. right?
Oh, I was thinking like, oh shit, let's go lanyard. All right, fine.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about lanyard, but everybody gets to drink because I just said lanyard. Thanks, Bob.
No problem.
No, I'm talking about journalists. Now, journalism and newspapers and the magazine business have been in the process of collapsing into a black hole for the past couple of decades.
Yep.
And because of that, there are a lot of people in the industry who are very interested in how are we going to keep everyone from getting sucked into the black hole. We've seen a whole bunch of newspapers go down in there. We want to keep every single journalist from getting sucked in there. And they've been looking for new ways to do things. And a thing that's happened just in the last couple of years is they've gotten very interested in fact-checking. Because one of the things that's happened is even the journalism outfits that still exist don't have enough money to do fact-checking anymore in many cases. So stuff gets out there that maybe needs fact-checking. And then, of course, there's the whole social media thing where these stories get passed around. So there's all these interesting projects right now that are largely coming out of journalists that are about fact-checking and rumors and things like that, and it's a really interesting area to watch because a lot of times they can be, I hesitate to say subverted, but they can be used for skeptical purposes. And so with that in mind, I wanted to talk about a new one that was just launched, I guess, a week and a half ago or so, or 2 weeks ago, which is when I was out, called Emergent. It's emergent.info. And it's built by Craig Silverman, who's a journalist up in Canada, although I guess he might be in New York now. Anyway, he's now a fellow with the Tao Center at the Columbia Journalism School in New York. And he's doing this as a research project. And essentially, it's sort of like a Snopes machine. It's like an somewhat automated Snopes thing. And the idea is it starts with tips. People send them tips of here are things that are going around on social media or rumors that are in the press that it's not quite clear whether they're true or not. And then they start tracking them on this thing. And the interesting thing is the thing, as you can see here, I just have confirmed false and unverified. But basically it has like a traffic light, red, yellow, and green of, confirmed false, we don't know yet, and confirm true. And they try to collect all the links to stories on major news sites that they can find. The automated part is the site tracks how much those links are being shared. So they can see whether the true links are outrunning the false links on Twitter and stuff like that. And see, whether it makes a difference how fast things get debunked, or how popular the site is, and stuff like that. So let me give you an example. One of the items here is something right in Eve's wheelhouse. There's an item here, the third one. A historian discovered a text with an account of a miracle performed by Jesus. And there's 158,000 shares of that. If you click that on the site, you come to this page, which is one of their story pages, and this is just the top part of the page, and it's from a rather cheesy website called World News Daily Report. And if you haven't noticed this yet, there's a whole kind of subculture now, or I don't know what you would call it, a genre of site where they're kind of...
It's an ecosystem, yeah.
They're what?
It's an ecosystem of nonsense. Nonsense.
Ecosystem of nonsense where there are these sites that are kind of like The Onion, except not funny.
Right.
So they post these goofball, weird news stories, made up things, and then they look to see if they can get any traction on social media. So they'll post things like this story, which is just ready-made for conservative Christians to post online. And this particular site is called World News Daily Report, which kind of sounds like World News Daily, or a couple of other sites have similar names. So if you weren't paying attention, you would notice that it's wrong. Or you would think it was a real...
And a lot of people are not paying attention.
Right. And they just it's been shown that people pass links along without actually reading the link. They see a friend post it, and then they retweet it, or they grab the link and say their own thing, and they don't even bother to dig in and look to see whether the site is a credible site or whether
If it sounds like something they agree with, they forward it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed to admit that when I saw the headline, I thought it meant that Jesus had gotten the new iPhone or something, and that kind of text, like, lol. I rose from the dead.
Jesus got a new iPhone, and he promptly bent it in his back pocket.
Yeah.
Holy emoji. Yeah.
And he could bend it without touching it at all.
Now, this particular page only has one story for and one against, and as you can see,
he turned water into Wi-Fi.
The 4 is in the Wi-Fi. That's good. This story, the 4, is completely outrunning the debunk. If you on stories that have multiple news stories, you can scroll down and see the stats on each one of the news stories, and so see which one's most popular. And you can see individual stats there for Facebook and Twitter and things like that. So
I love the description. This document allegedly recounts Jesus resuscitating a stillborn baby and handing him back to his mother. You know, like, breathe, damn it!
Right. And here's the original story, here's the debunk, but you can see that they've basically just taken a picture of a scroll off of Wikipedia, and it's some other scroll, and of course, you know, regular people can't read the language there, so they don't know what
Eve probably can.
And it's a fake news site, and it's just, you know, just totally a made-up story. And this is a site that, you know, dug into it for 15 minutes and figured out that it was fake. But so it's an interesting site, and I suggest that skeptics get involved in submitting tips to it, because it'll be interesting to see. This is part of essentially a study project. They're going to be studying the stats on the site to try to determine, you know, what debunks work better, what debunks work worse, which sites outrun other sites, how fast does the debunk have to be done to actually catch up with the people who are virally spreading stuff, and try to learn if there's any patterns to this. So they're actually doing some interesting research here into how these stupid viral rumors spread, and is it even possible to debunk them once they go viral.
What's the mechanism for their tracking? How are they tracking the number of shares?
I think they are using there's APIs for
Is it APIs
Twitter.
from the link sharing services?
Huh?
Is it APIs from the link sharing services?
No, I think there are direct APIs in. Well, I know, like for instance, on Twitter, you can punch a URL into search, and it will show you all the tweets.
Oh, so for social media, they're pulling the data.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know if it was coming from the original source. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's just social media shares, and there's also some stuff in the engine, so that, for instance, on a news site that might post updates and update the story and say that, oh, this has been debunked, this Emergent will pick that up, and so stories will change from red to green and things like that, and the numbers will shift around. So they have it so that it will go back and scrape the story again and figure out whether or not the content has changed. So that's part of what they're studying, to see whether news sites actually go back and update these crazy stories that they post, or do they just run on to the next viral list of 10 potatoes that look like Ben Affleck and try to get the next.
You had that example really close to the tip of your, like, right, ready to go. That was good. 10 potatoes that look like Ben Affleck.
I think Matt Damon seems more plausible.
Matt Damon!
So, keep an eye on journalists. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on. Craig Silverman, he does a site called Regret the Error, all about how websites deal with mistakes. And he's doing this study, and there's a thing called the Knight Foundation that gives money to projects like this. And so there's a lot of really interesting work being done by journalists trying to solve the problem of basically bullshit being spread online in different ways. And skeptics could take advantage of it.
That Fox News it gets 60% of its news wrong. I didn't check it. Is that on there?
Maybe.
No.
Did you know that 92% of all statistics quoted online are completely made up?
Yeah, I heard that it was Abraham Lincoln who said that.
Yeah. All right, so that's the end of my segment. We have saved our special guest, Blake Smith, who now looks like he should be riding a motorcycle or something.
Maybe my eyes were drying out. I put on these glasses all of a sudden. So,
Okay.
sorry.
That's what happens when you have to stay awake for the whole show.
Oh, yeah, that could be it. I was up really late last night. That's a fact.
And so, Blake, you're going to talk about movies for skeptics, pop
Yeah,
culture?
briefly. It's almost Halloween, and it's that time of the year when everybody's posting all their scary stories and whatnot. And it's funny because I've been involved in the skeptics community for about 7 years, even though I've self-identified as a pretty skeptical person since about 1997. So I've run into a lot of people who are really picky about the movies they watch. Like if it's got a supernatural element, they don't want to see it, that kind of thing. And I find that a little weird because I don't have any difficulty flipping the it's just a movie, enjoy it switch in my head, but it seems to bug some people. But I wanted to try to find a few movies that maybe if you're a very skeptical and not very fantasy-prone person, you might still be able to enjoy. So theoretically, these would be films that where the protagonists are not fools, for example. where they try, even if there is a supernatural element, people approach it as though it's something that can have logical rules and be addressed accordingly. So that's kind of my criteria. It still ends up just being a list of movies, and these are not like my favorite movies, although one of them is. So with all those kind of caveats, let's hit slide 1.
Okay.
All right. So these are not in any particular order, and in fact, if there were an order, this would be number 1 or number 2 on my list. But it's number 1 just because that's where I threw it. This is Night of the Demon, also called Curse of the Demon. There's a couple different versions of it, but it's based on a really great ghost story or supernatural story called Casting the Runes by the author M.R. James. If you listen to Monster Talk, I think last Christmas I did a reading of that
James,
story.
Also great scholar.
Oh yeah, he's an antiquarian. Yes, he is. Yep. Yeah. So he was a fantastic writer, and he loved to write scary stories, and he doesn't hold back. Although he likes to include ambiguity in his stories. So when they made this movie, first of all, this movie is only loosely based on the story, though I think it gets the spirit of it, if you'll pardon. And the main character is a scientist. He's a psychologist, and he's a skeptic. Like he would be like a Joe Nickel type. Who encounters this cult in England and is cursed. So he's got this curse and he has to deal with it, but he doesn't know if it's real or not. It doesn't seem like it should be real. He's very doubtful. Yet as evidence begins to mount, he has to use his logic and reason to combat what could be a horrible death. It's a really well done film. The sort of backstory is they didn't want to include this demon figure, which you see in the poster. The director didn't want to, because even in the story, it seems like it's plausible that there wasn't any supernatural element, but maybe there was. But the producer definitely wanted to have the monster. I think the monster works anyway. I think it's a great film, and it also is sampled sort of in a Kate Bush song where you'll hear someone saying, "It's in the trees, it's coming." It's really good, so I would definitely say watch that. In fact, I recommended it to Sharon Hill, and she seemed to enjoy it, and so give it a shot.
All right.
Number 2.
Oh, yeah.
This one is called.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is called no. Quatermass in the Pit. There's this character, Bernard Quatermass, who is a science fiction hero created by screenwriter Nigel Neal, and this was done as several BBC TV episodes, but then Hammer made a motion picture version, and it's really outstanding. The main character, Bernard Quatermass, is a scientist, and there's an excavation going on in which they find an ancient spaceship buried in the stone, and it's got this fascinating sort of what do they call it? What in the
Pagina?
when you have genesis of life from another planet, it's got a really cool plot. Yeah, what was that?
Panspermia.
Panspermia. It's got panspermia and
all over it. Ew.
yeah, it's like full frontal panspermia, and it talks about evolution. It's just really good. It's just very, very good, very rational. But it's like what happens when a rationalist is exposed to this apparently psychic, supernatural type stuff. It's just really well done.
And the same demon as Night of the Demon.
No. In fact, there's no demons in this, but
I see one in the poster.
No, it's not. You're just using iconography. That's not necessarily what that is. So.
Why is
or symbolology?
That's right.
Why is Ernest Hemingway concerned?
Someone took his booze.
Yeah, he's frozen, and that woman stuck to him. So.
Oh, poor guy.
He was a little bit sweaty, and he was cold.
In the wrong direction.
Yeah. Well.
All right.
Speak for yourself. I like the way it's composed. So the third one is the 1982 version of John. This is called John Carpenter's The Thing. It's technically the original film, and this are based on the story Who Goes There by John Campbell, and the 1951 version is actually called The Thing from Another World, although a lot of people just call it the 1951 version of The Thing.
The original Thing?
The original Thing. This one is closer to the story. The story deals with what happens to a remote group of scientists when they encounter an alien life form that has the ability to replicate any living thing. And so one by one they've got to figure out which one of them has been taken over and which one of them which one of the group is still human. It's a fascinating, horrific film. It's got fantastic 1980s special effects that just hold up so well. It's amazing. I watch it every year. The original, the 1951 version, was the film debut of James Arnaz, who was a lot of people know from Gunsmoke. He was a really tall guy. His brother is also really tall, is Peter Graves. They both chose different last names for acting. And Graves was also the narrator of one of these famous cryptid films of the 70s, which was called The Mysterious Monsters. And on Monster Talk, I sample the trailer for that show to make my monster theme song for the Monster Talk. So, highly recommended. Great movie, thrilling soundtrack. Let's keep moving.
All right.
So, this is The Innocents, which is a story based on the Henry James story, The Turn of the Screw. It's the story of a governess who's charged with watching two children who may be under the influence of two malignant ghosts. Or maybe not. It's a really interesting idea. Is she crazy? I don't know. That's not a very nice thing to say about her. She seems like a nice lady, but it's another one of these great horror stories where ambiguity is the key to the success. I think it's the cinnamon swirl in a cat's face on top of the latte of horror. So.
Nice.
Let's keep going. Oh, that's the screenplay is written by Truman Capote. If you're into literature.
Yeah. I always like that myself, where they leave a little bit of ambiguity because it's like reality. You never quite know whether.
Well, that's classic Gothic technique. That's
right.
That's.
But the thing that I hate about it is you get these the TV the current generation of TV people will can't resist, kind of cutting it off at the knees at the end, so you'll see like an episode of some show, like, some cop show or something, and there's a psychic character, and then the whole show you're not quite sure whether they're psychic, and then they put this for no reason at the end of the episode, put some kind of gag where it's like, oh, he really was psychic, and then freeze frame and into the credits, and it's like, you jerk, you had something good going there and you just ruin it by wanting to cement it down.
Well, that's what
Yeah.
like the reverse of that would be the X-Files, right? Where when there was a mysterious conspiracy, it was fun to watch, but when they started revealing the conspiracy, like, really, that's what's going on?
Yeah.
So,
Like,
all
yep.
right,
All right.
next.
Next one.
All right, the 1963 film of The Haunting. Do not watch the remake. Do
Oh.
not watch the remake. It's horrible. Okay. This is based on the novel by Shirley Jackson. It's directed by Robert Wise, who was also the director of The Day the Earth Stood Still and Star Trek: The Motion Picture, or as I like to call it, Star Trek: The Slow Motion Picture. So, now, if you watch this film, it's about a group of people who go to a presumed haunted house to do a scientific investigation. But
They don't have EMF detectors, so how could they?
they don't. But it's good. It's real good. They're trying real hard to do the science. But the main character, it seems a little unstable, and I don't want to spoil the plot. But what I find interesting is that the plot really revolves about the place itself having a horrible psychic energy and almost being like a psychic vampire type place. If that's what's really happening, there's some ambiguity. But what's interesting to me is that Stephen King basically takes the same plot and sticks it in this fictional Overlook Hotel to make The Shining.
Yeah.
It's literally the same plot. In much the same way that if you watch Salem's Lot is basically the story of Dracula retold in King style. So I enjoy both, but it's but yeah, definitely the 1963 version. You'll get a kick out of it, I think. It's an amazingly creepy film. If you're watching it alone, lights out, everybody's being quiet, you're not getting up, taking breaks, and you just let your imagination run wild. They don't really show a lot, but it evokes a sense of dread very effectively, I think. So next. Oh, this whole list will be in the show notes, right? So.
Yep.
Okay, so people can find this. You don't have to be writing these down because I know our millions of listeners are struggling with notepad and paper, which is the same thing. It's why it's not working. Right? You should have a notepad and a pen. Anyway, this is Invasion of the Body Snatchers. There's two versions of this film. There's actually more, but I'd recommend the 1956 version and the 1978 version. Either of these they're both based on the novel by Jack Finney. Some people say it's a story about McCarthyism, and I would say that might be because Kevin McCarthy is the protagonist in the 56 version. I'm not really sure. So
I didn't realize that until the second or third time I watched it.
Well, but you know what though, you want to talk about a movie where you don't know whether or not the guy's crazy, and then they spoil it at the end.
Oh yeah.
The story is they made them tack on that ending.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that.
But that's a movie. The McCarthyism thing. If you haven't been thinking about it, and then you go back and watch the movie and think about McCarthyism, it kind of puts an interesting little sort of subtext.
Oh,
into
it's
it that you won't
wonderful.
notice.
You know, everybody is creepy. Everyone is betraying you. There is a conspiracy. It's been in my conspiracy class.
Oh, really? That's cool. It's good. It's really good. And, of course, think of all the tropes that come from these films. The whole idea of pod people. The keep watching the skies, I believe, comes from this at the end. Is that what he says?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so...
And oh, God, what is it? There's something about... Oh, man. It's... Everybody is constantly drinking constantly. Is that it? Throughout the entire movie?
It's been a while since I watched the 50s version.
It really sticks out that everybody has a drink in their hand at all times.
Yeah.
And their heads are stuck together.
Yeah, like for most of the film, right?
Yes.
So
Not
the
that close to
1978 version has Leonard Nimoy and Donald Sutherland together, so you just know that's creepy, right? That's a very creepy formula. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a great film on its own. It works very
Who's
well.
the female?
Leonard Nimoy.
No,
I don't remember. She looks like somebody with a V name. I don't know what that means. Like Valerie something. I don't know. I don't remember. I was so kind of hung up on the Spock and Donald Sutherland guy, you know, and it was just I failed. All right.
Okay.
If you click the link in the show notes, it'll take you to information about who is actually in the film. Because really, I should have mentioned who the female leads in both these films were.
In
So
the 78 version, it's Brooke
Adams.
I don't know who that is.
It's that woman there.
Yeah, but I mean, what else has she done? So
She looks like Ellie Sheedy.
Not a ton.
she reminds me of somebody from a TV show.
Yeah. The 56 version was Dana Winter, who I think was a little better known back then.
The 50s, Dana could be a boy or a girl. That may still be true. Apparently, Blake can be a boy or a girl. Not me personally, but the name. So. Oh, and so the Pod People idea also kind of feeds into the Stepford Wives, which is not on my list. But if you watch the Stepford Wives, like the 1975 version, it's kind of a similar idea in some ways. But do not watch the remake, which is, I don't know what it's about. It's about 93 minutes too long. That's what it's about. Next.
Next up.
I gotta go fast. Sorry, we're running out of time.
Yep.
Silence of the Lambs. This is one of 3 films based on the true story of Ed Gein, and the other 2 would be Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So none of these films are as creepy as the real story of Ed Gein, but the closest is probably Silence of the Lambs. And Silence of the Lambs is also probably the smartest one, and of course was sponsored by the Fava Bean Council. So, fun film. Not for the kiddies. Yeah.
No.
Next. The Wicker Man. There was a remake of this. No. Yeah. This is a fun and creepy film, and very intelligently done. It's about this guy, Police Sergeant Howie, who's called to, played by Edward Woodward, who's called to go to this place called Summer Isle to find a missing girl. And what he discovers instead is that there's a pagan fertility cult on the island, and he's a very devout Christian. And it's this fascinating story about how this authority figure with really uptight morals has to deal with this strange culture that he can't believe is actually existing. And it's a gripping horror film. It has fake nudity by Britt Eklund. And it's also kind of a stealth musical. In fact, if you listen to it, it's one of those films where you wonder, why haven't they made a musical version of this? I mean, it'd be quite spectacular. It'd be really cool on Broadway. I don't know how they do The Fire, but if they could do Spider-Man and only kill 1 or 2 actors a week, I think they could do that. And it's also, the soundtrack's so cool. There's the pop band Sneaker Pimps did a cover of the song How Do, which is in this movie. I put a link to that at the end of the show notes for this segment. So check it out. Next. Beep. So a lot of people that I know in the skeptics movement don't care for the zombies, which is a little weird to me. And one of the reasons they don't is because zombies don't really make any sense. But as far as plausible zombie narratives go, I think 28 Days Later is the most likely thing with their rage virus. So this is kind of a post-zombie apocalypse film. And it's really, really fun. It's done by Danny Boyle. It's one of the smarter zombie films out there. It has one of the most frightening sequences I've ever seen, which is really early in the film. You see a full frontal nudity of Cillian Murphy. Just devastating. And it also features Doctor Who's Kristen in a role that I found really disturbing. So when I found that he'd been cast as Doctor Who, really for most of that season, I could not stop seeing him as the military character he plays in this film.
Yeah. Some of the extras in that, and if I remember correctly, the extras, this movie was storyboarded in a completely different direction, wasn't it? Am I wrong?
I'm not sure. I know it was shot on video. It was one of the first really popular films to be shot on video.
Kind of
digital
guerrilla film techniques.
He did, like absolutely. There's the scenes of London being abandoned, much like they did a lot of really low cost ways, going out really early in the mornings. There's a lot of scenes staged when there wouldn't be anybody there.
Yeah, and if you know London and all, they're pretty amazing scenes because he's in like some of the most busy intersections of London, and he's standing there like in the middle of the bridge over the Thames. And
Tower Bridge.
It's like, how the hell did they do that?
It's not like a Doctor Who. They could just announce over the PA system, "We're filming the Doctor. Everybody go inside." And everybody would because they love the Doctor, but it's not like that. So
right.
All right, so that's number 9. And
I thought they had like really narrow windows of permit time to let them do it. But
On
They
IMDb,
figured
there's
out,
a
they
section of
figured out
trivia.
something. They figured out like the exact time of year when the sun came up earliest on the day. So the sun comes up at like 6, whatever the earliest time the sun comes up.
These
in London.
stories are sounding. They probably just use.
And they
a
filmed
Mac
it on
to pick the people
at,
out.
right at sunrise on Sunday morning.
I saw this movie.
So there was no business traffic.
You remember that movie Monsters, Tim?
Yeah.
So that was filmed really cheaply, and it turns out there weren't any monsters at all. Like the whole thing was done with computers.
Yeah.
So,
Wonder how that works.
so
wow.
next one.
All right.
All right, so this one's the wild card here. So most of these films have a more rational basis, but here I think it's this is based on Dennis Wheatley's work, and Dennis Wheatley was a British writer. The last time I was on this show, in fact, when we get to our little reading segments, I read the intro to one of his stories where he basically says, all these things are real, and if you're going to get involved in it, you're going to die horribly, basically. So, I know this firsthand. I wasn't in the cults, but I know people who barely made it out alive. So he seems to. I don't know if he really believed this stuff was real, but he certainly never faltered in that sort of artifice if it was made up. Anyway, that being said, this is one of the rare films where Christopher Lee plays a hero. So it's really fun. Basically, Christopher Lee leads this band of World War I type veterans against a crazy devil cult trying to rescue one of the former members of their squadron, and it's good. It's real good.
At the very end, the devil cult becomes an animal rescue group.
That's right.
Winged horses.
So they actually made 6 of the Wheatley novels into Hammer films, but from what I understand, the last one in the series, Wheatley hated it so much that he refused to do any more work with the studio. And that was the film To the Devil, a Daughter, which had Richard Widmark as the protagonist. And a 14-year-old Natasha Kinski doing a nude scene. Very weird situation. But The Devil Rides Out is a treat. It's action-packed, fun, great script. The script was written by, I believe, Richard Matheson, unless I'm mistaken, but I don't think I am. And you'll know his work from Twilight Zone and I Am the Omega Man. Well,
Yeah,
I Am.
you're right.
Yeah, so a lot of Twilight Zone stuff, but really great writer.
Yep.
Anyway, that's 10 movies I think skeptics might really enjoy. So give them a shot.
Nice.
We have something to watch now, Eve.
Yeah. We have a few things in the Q&A app. Alex Murdoch pointed out that the Kate Bush song you were talking about that sampled that movie is Hounds of Love.
Yeah, there's actually a weird little mystery about whether she really sampled it or had it re-recorded. Not for legal reasons, but because there were some stories that she couldn't get the recording to come out right. It sounds really close to me, though.
Oh, interesting.
Who doesn't love some Kate Bush trivia?
Yeah. And Emilio was asking us about skeptics not caring about zombies.
Yeah.
My problem with zombies isn't... I like a good zombie story because it's creepy and everything. I have a problem with zombies that's the Walking Dead scenario where the zombies last a long time. It seems to me that any sort of zombie apocalypse would burn out pretty quickly.
At least in the South where it's all humid. Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. I'm actually kind of surprised, you having lived in the South for a little bit, how little of the post-apocalyptic South is covered in kudzu.
Yeah, that's not real. That's made up.
Yeah,
that's
it
less believable
spoils
than
the illusion for me.
Yeah, right.
Yep. Looking to see if we had any other questions that we wanted to handle. I don't see any. We will get those show notes up there. So let's deal with our housekeeping for the show while everybody gets their book ready for book time. The answer to trivia. Once again, Amanda got it right. I think she was the only one who tried to answer it. the answer was that Mr. Ignatius Donnelly claimed that it was meteors, or more specifically fragments from a comet called Comet Biela, which had appeared, had a 6-year cycle and had appeared several times earlier in that century and had disintegrated into pieces. It's one of the early comets where we actually saw it break up, and hadn't been seen for a couple of years, and he thought the pieces of it came down. And anyone who reads Phil Plate's blog knows that meteors are actually pretty cold when they hit the ground. They're not hot at all. Due to
But it hit a box of matches.
It was a meteor that knocked the lamp over, not the cow.
Right.
That's right.
The meteor hit the cow. The cow freaked out and sort of went, "Oh my God," and then knocked over the lamp.
Nice. And was somebody serious when they wrote this bonus trivia question into the document? Because I don't know what.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What? Bonus
the
trivia.
bonus trivia is name other fringe theories from Ignatius Donnelly. I don't know what the answer to that is.
All of them.
Well, first of all, spoiler, it may come up in book time. Secondly, name anything.
Oh.
Atlantis.
Atlantis.
Whatever.
He popularized Atlantis. He did Shakespeare denial, all sorts of stuff.
Bob,
So
shut up.
Shakespeare did not know.
He was the local nut job of the 1870s.
And
He
a
was
politician.
The Pell. Yeah, because he was a politician, like
Oh, nice.
the Pell Grant guy.
Or not so
Isn't the Pell
Wait.
Grant guy who?
Yeah, he's
He
weird.
set up the Pell Grant? or he had a Pell Grant.
No, but he did some good things, but also was kind of nuts.
Yeah.
People are rarely as simple as history would have us believe.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't see any announcements that anybody put in the file. Does anybody have any announcements? Blake, what's going on with Monster Talk?
We just released our Robot Apocalypse episode
Oh.
today. Daniel H. Wilson joined us to talk about robots for an hour. I was so sad that Brian was not going to be on the show tonight because I would have loved to have chatted about that. So
Yeah, so if you're missing the robot segment because Brian's not here, go over
get a full
and
hour of it. Yeah.
go to monstertalk.org and get your apocalypse on. Also over on skeptic.com is the Insight blog that we mentioned several times in the intro, which is
Where
the
you
new-
can learn that maybe the cow didn't start the fire, but it certainly started a lot of tuberculosis.
There you go.
Yeah.
And find out whether Pasteur actually invented pasteurization and a number of other cool things. Eve's got an article about the Vikings, and I will soon have something up there if I get off my duff.
I got nothing.
So who has a book ready?
I do.
I do too.
Okay. Bob, you go first.
Some, but not all psychics are mediums, meaning they have the ability to communicate with dead people. Some are gifted in precognition, crime-solving, psychic healing or diagnosis, being empathetic, sensing another person's physical or psychological problem, even if he or she isn't aware of it, or communicating with animals. Over the years, I've encountered children and adults who are gifted in every one of these areas.
Eve.
Having, as I trust, established that there was a gravestone anterior to the present one, that it dated back to the time of Shakespeare's burial, that the inscription upon it was believed to have been written by Shakespeare himself, and that it was bilateral in its character, and an uncouth mixture of large and small letters, let us next ascertain what was the precise form of the inscription, for upon that the cipher, if there is one, must depend.
Blake?
But how does it come about, step by step, that some complex systems actually function? This question, to which we as students of general systemantics attach the highest importance, has not yet yielded to intensive modern methods of investigation and analysis. As of this writing, only a limited and partial breakthrough can be reported as follows. A complex system that works is invariably found to have evolved from a simple system that worked. The parallel proposition also appears to be true. A complex system designed from scratch works and cannot be made to work. You have to start over, beginning with a working, simple system.
Good advice. After the Ellis closed its doors in August 1988, Jordan faced the same dilemma again, what to do with the building. But this time he did not just have an old rundown building, but rather a beautiful theater. Enter Paul Blaine, the former manager of Hollywood stars such as Mel Torme and Jane Mansfield. Jordan described him to me as this weird old Hollywood retread dude. He talked like old Hollywood. And he said that we could have this place where we'd get the aging stars of the entertainment industry who are way past their prime, and we'd call it the Variety Playhouse. All right, Bob, what was your book?
My book is Growing Up Shithead by Chip Coffey. Psychic! Growing Up Psychic. Sorry, I slipped out.
So it was a mere clerical error. Eve?
That's right.
The Cipher in the Plays and on the Tombstone by Ignatius Donnelly, arguing that Francis Bacon wrote the works of Shakespeare based on a cipher of a tombstone that doesn't actually exist.
Nice.
I can't hold up my book cover because it's on my Kindle app. But I was reading from the Systems Bible, The Beginner's Guide to Systems Large and Small, the third edition of Systemantics by John Gall.
Nice. And I was reading from an entirely unrelated book, but that was close at hand, called The Highs and Lows of Little Five, which is a neighborhood here in Atlanta. And that was part of the history of a building called Variety Playhouse that I wrote the Wikipedia article for.
Oh, cool.
I think that Tim has finally merged with the machine.
That was George Ellis's
Yes.
theater.
The
And George, what was his Bestoink?
Bestoink Dooley.
Yeah, so we did a last episode of Monster Talk. We covered TV movie horror hosts.
Oh, and you mentioned Bestoink Dooley?
Yep. So
Nice. I've always wanted to write an article for him, but I've never been able to dig up good references for it, just so that I could type Bestoink Dooley a couple more times.
yeah, he was in an actual film. I think you probably know that, right?
Yeah. Some film that was filmed out in Stone Mountain.
Some crummy horror film, apparently. So.
Yeah. I did uncover that. Yep, Atlanta trivia. So I think we are done, aren't we?
I believe so.
Oh, did anybody guess what was on my screens back here? What's?
And posters. Hopefully I won't kill everyone with the music. Alright, so we're ready to go for another week. The Virtual Skeptics is an independent production of whatstheharm.net, Skeptical Humanities, Brian Gregory, ICBS Everywhere, and Doubtful News, and Monster Talk. Our logo was designed by Sarah Mayhew at sarahmayhew.com, and our theme music is by Musicant and is used with permission.
All right.